This is the People's Water Board Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for February 2nd, 2022.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back again, beloved community, with another installment of our Water Wednesdays webcast by the People's Water Board Coalition. Today, I am here with a very special guest, an international guest that has done great work in activism around the ecology across the globe. She is part of the African Ecofeminist collective, and she is a known ecofeminist, and she is from Kenya. And today we are having the pleasure of talking to her and finding out what's going on globally and how we interconnect with each other. Today we have Ms. Ruth Knyambura. We are so happy to have you here today, Ms. Knyambura. Thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to meet with us today.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic to be here and to be connected in this particular way. Third year into the pandemic, but still very grateful that we still have ways to be in community with one another across the globe.
It means so much, and you know the fact that we're all we love to be able to connect water issues across the globe, because once we do, we realize that a lot of us are going through the same things, you know, when it comes to water insecurities and things like that. So it's such an important conversation for us to have and for people to be thinking about. Do you want to, we'll jump right into it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the Ecofeminist collective and kind of what that work is?
Okay, so the African Ecofeminist collective is basically a radical, feminist, anti-capitalist, left. Some of us identify as Marxists. And I want to say that because I understand what's happening in the US, and you hear things like words like Marxist or even communist, it causes a sort of terror within that particular space. But so we are, a left-leaning collective that was started almost a decade ago by various African feminists, activists, organizers, academics, researchers, all working on the intersections of ecological justice, working on the politics of food sovereignty, challenging mining companies and the politics of extractivism. Some of us fighting for seed justice against, the commodification and privatization of the ecological and agrarian commons. And so we came together in that sense. To also think about a radical politics, that centers women, but also challenges patriarchy, not as something inherent, inherent on the continent, but actually challenging, that the ideological underpinnings of patriarchy, be it capitalism, for example, or neoliberal ideologies. So in a nutshell, that is what the African Ecofeminist collective is, and the members of the collective are part of different movements across the continent, very, very many movements. And in this particular instance, the African Ecofeminist Collective is part of the steering committee of the Alternative World Water Forum, which is being held in Dakar, Senegal in March this year. So these are some of the connections that the collective is part of. So we don't do silo politics with regard to the politics of ecology. As Audre Lorde says, there's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. So our politics is a politics of collaborative liberation and freedom for all.
The Water Summit, what did you call it? I missed the name of it. What was the name of the water?
So let me back up a bit. So basically this year, so let me just say a little bit in terms so that your viewers can understand. So every single year, it's not every single year, every 3 years since 1997, the World Water Council, which is a pro-corporate neoliberal organization, organizes a World Water Forum. The first one was held in 1997 in Morocco. And for the very first time, since 1997 in Morocco, Morocco. The forum is coming back to the continent. This meeting was initially supposed to be held in 2020, but because of the pandemic, it has been postponed for the last 2 years. But this year, finally, it's going to be held. It's finally going to be held in Dakar. But outside of that, since the World Water Forum began, there's always been a counter summit, so a summit by movements on the sidelines of the main forum, movements challenging the privatization of water, the commodification of water. And majority of these movements and groups, organizations, individuals are based in the global south. So basically rejecting the pro-capitalist, pro-privatization ideas and ideologies of the World Water Forum. So this is what I am part of, the African Ecofeminist Collective, with very many comrades on the continent of Africa, but literally from every corner of the world. So we are organizing a counter summit on the sidelines of the main summit.
That's great.
Absolutely. That is awesome, the work that you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the particular countries you have worked in and what water insecurity issues they face?
All right. So I'll speak specifically. So my own work actually emerged out of, analysis around food sovereignty. So my first, in terms of like my organizing and activism work, actually emerges out of the food sovereignty and agrarian justice movement. So that was the first thing I did over, started something like 10, 12 years ago. And so what we see, for example, on the continent of Africa, in the last 15, almost 20 years, there's been sort of like, we're calling it a new land rush, many people equating it to, the colonial partition of Africa. And we've seen sort of like, a new, emergence of, a land rush on the continent being led by multinational corporations, different countries, not just in the global north, but also in the east and also in West Asia, or what is referred to as Middle East, which is problematic because what is middle about the east? So this is what we've basically seen. So corporations, multinational corporations coming together. These are seed companies, fertilizer companies, big companies such as Yara, which is the largest, fertilizer company in the world. You'd have the Monsantos and the Syngentas, working to influence policies around food and seed and whatnot, or what we call the commons, basically the natural resources. And with that, we've seen that with industrial agriculture, and there's a tendency to only look at industrial agriculture in the sense that, well, it doesn't really feed people, still overwhelmingly, especially on this continent, African people are fed by smallholder peasant farmers working on very, very little land. Of course, the continued, push by the states and corporations, but also industrial agriculture, the ideas and ideologies of industrial agriculture, because it is deeply connected to the fossil fuel industries, means that the water gets polluted, underground sources of water get polluted. And when you're grabbing land, you're not just grabbing land anywhere. The tendency to grab land, to push, to take land, the most fertile land near water sources. In fact, there is an argument to be made about the land rush that we've seen in the last 20 years, right? There's an argument that it wasn't just about land, it was also about the water sources of the continent of Africa. So that is one example of how we think about the politics of water, because there's a tendency also to really focus on urban struggles. And of course, that's really, really important, because increasingly more and more people, especially in the global south, are living in the cities more than they are living in rural areas. But when we talk about the intersections of water struggles, which is what we are doing with the forum, but also what we do within the African Ecofeminist Collective, we're seeing all these pieces. How does industrial agriculture and industrial farming impact water? How does extractivism in the context of mining impact water? How do water meters, for example, in urban areas impact the ability and the rights of people, to access water? How does all this intersect with the politics of race and class? for example, because they're also very, very present, across the world, race, class, caste, gender, sexualities. So it's bringing all these intersections together, holding them together, thinking about what are the material underpinnings of these ideologies, but then tailoring our struggles in such ways that they have material impact on the people, and thinking about what does liberation look like? What does water justice look like, outside of the corporate ideas of what justice, rights, and entitlements and freedom look like. Yeah.
Yes.
So, so powerful to see a real concerted effort for folks to be coming together across movements. We're always trying to figure that out. We've, of course, living in Michigan, we same struggles as far as the poisoning of the land and the water from big agricultural companies, but also big oil companies are fighting a pipeline going through the Great Lakes right now. It's called Line 5. It's an Enbridge pipeline, and it carries tar sands, which is like the worst thing on the planet to have running through your water. And it's so like in dealing with all of those exact same things. So it's but that's what we really struggle with is trying to get people from all the different movements together to fight it together, because everybody's kind of siloed, and something that we're always struggling with. So it feels so hopeful that you all are able to kind of pull that together. And also kind of that the World Water Summit that you talked about, and I'm going to look it up the second I get off of this call, because I want to know all about them. It kind of sounds a little bit like the COP26 conference in Gaslow, like where, they set up all the indigenous folks and people of color set up a counter summit to actually fight and protest. It's kind of it sounds like about the same strategy as that. And last week we had somebody that was there, Baba Darrow, come on and tell us about being in Gaslow. So it all kind of sounds like that.
And the upcoming one that's going to be in Egypt.
Yeah, absolutely. And last COP was the first COP that I had not attended in 10 years. So I've spent a decade going to every single COP meeting, climate summit meeting. Last year, I did not attend in protest because, of course, vaccine appetite to begin with, but also, when you hold these conferences, especially in the global north, visa appetite, the politics of the borders and how difficult and expensive it is for activists in the global south to access those spaces that are supposed to be liberatory spaces. And of course, always in this decade that I've been going to the climate summits, the beauty, attending the People's Summit has always been so powerful and so important. And so the Counter Summit, the Alternative World Water Forum that we are organizing is part of that long tradition, that if we must be in those spaces, then we have to be in those spaces in our own ways, that we refuse to attend this corporate spaces infiltrated by oppressive power, infiltrated by individual systems that continue to perpetuate the same systems of oppression, and we create sort of like our own small liberated zones. So that is the same within the same idea and the same framework. And I must say, it's not just within the climate change space or water space. Very many spaces, such as even like conversations about forests. I've also been in spaces where there have been counter summits and counter protests. So this is to say that there's a tendency to feel that people are not resisting. People are resisting.
That's right.
Every single day in many, many ways, putting their lives, their bodies, and everything, on the front lines.
And that's why conversations like this is so important, so that people across the globe can know that there are more people fighting against these issues than just them, and they don't feel that they have to be siloed, or they don't feel that they're the only ones going through this struggle, that there's a concerted effort across the globe to rectify these issues of corporate takeovers, of privatization, of just capitalism and poverty in general, that there are so many more people working on this. And that's why we have to learn to reach out to other organizations and collectives and find out how we can get involved so that we can build a bigger global collective.
A global movement to protect water is, it's, you can almost hear it breathing, right? You can, in different parts of the states and certainly in different parts of the world. Every once in a while, I get lucky enough to be invited on an international call with all women water protectors from around the world. And I always leave feeling so much hope and ready to be able to mobilize and pull people together for so that we can really globally protect water. That's the main goal always. And here we fight, of course, for people to have affordable water. Water's not affordable in Detroit and other places. Do you see affordability problems in places like Kenya where you live and, the places that you visited?
Certainly. Affordability, accessibility, and even when it's sort of affordable and accessible, the quality of the water is so bad, But one of the things I like to talk about, especially, let me just focus a bit on urban struggles and politics about water on the continent of Africa broadly. One of the things that you'll see, and I want to give a very short but long history. What we're seeing, of course, is privatization, especially in the form of public-private partnerships, which have just taken hold in the last 20 years, which are being pushed as the model, so not outright privatization, but at the end of the day, it's really outright privatization because governments basically, take all the risks, while this corporate private entities enjoy all the benefits that, accrue to these kinds of relationships. But what we see, I must start from a particular, because people love to start at the end point, which is either lack of accessible water, expensive water, bad quality. But we must remember particular history in Africa. And I know this applies to the wider global South in Latin America and Asia. What happened in the late 70s and early 80s, structural adjustment programs. So whatever little effort that African governments had made regarding infrastructure, provision of social services and whatnot, we have to remember that this was dismantled by structural adjustment programs, the rolling back of the state and the pushing forward of, corporations and privatization and whatnot. So we don't just arrive at having public-private partnerships in 2022. We don't arrive at being in a pandemic where, governments are struggling in the sense that, we don't have water. Water is so essential in the middle of a pandemic like this. We don't arrive there, out of thin air. This has been a long historical dismantling and very ideological, not just material dismantling of the public sector, public services, but also an ideological dismantling that continues up to this date, even 3 years into a pandemic, without seeing real shifts. And you've seen how we're reading how billionaires have made more money in the pandemic and corporations are making all this money as more and more people have shrunk into poverty. Governments, for example, my own government, I can't count, I've lost count because for my own mental and physical and mental health and whatnot, the amount of loans we've had to take from the IMF and World Bank in order to stay afloat during this pandemic. And it's not just Kenya. So many countries in Africa and in the global South have been forced, to go to this same, financial institutions that caused the historical breakdown of public services, and also the investments have halted and continue to halt the investment into public services like water. It's ridiculous that people should pay for water. Really, it's absolutely ridiculous. Well, we should be paying for water, and of course, because class, class questions are so prevalent. If you're middle class, you're able to access water, even if not directly from, the city council, the municipal, or the federal government. You can be able to buy, a Bowser, to be able to come and feed your tank, or you're able to, drill, into the earth and have a borehole. But for the majority, the vast majority who are poor, who are also women, and children, especially for women, when you look at the gender issues and questions, because of the social roles that women are, play in the community. The burden falls on them in very, very dramatic ways, right? So you basically see, it's like it's not a ticking time bomb. It's a bomb that keeps on exploding every single second. It just literally keeps on exploding. And the most vulnerable of people, indigenous people, women, people living in rural areas, bear the biggest brand of this crisis. But this crisis has, the thing we say that we know who has, I can't fully remember it, but the people who've destroyed the earth have addresses. We know their addresses, we know who they are. And this is why
we have their names, we know their addresses.
And this is why I always insist that we must go back to history, because learning our history and how we find ourselves here is important, but we must name the structures of oppression. It is capitalism. As long as we live under capitalism, the idea of water justice will continue to remain a mirage. So we always say, as the African Ecofeminist Collective, but also in various movements, be it climate justice, food sovereignty, that we cannot achieve justice, sovereignty, freedom under the same system that has destroyed these very concepts for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they won't let us, they're not going to just allow us to fix it. The system's working exactly how it's designed to work.
Exactly.
And keeping the people away from basic resources and basic life resources is part of that system. And there's no getting out of it. I started doing work learning about Marxism and reading the Science of Society and those things. So we have that in common a little bit. But that's how I kind of started understanding the system at all. I didn't understand it before I was introduced to Marxism. But that's the hardest part for me, is that it ruins whole communities. It smashes whole communities. It takes away their right to breathe. I mean, in Southwest Detroit, you can't breathe. Mothers have to go out because of all there's a huge tar sands oil refinery in Southwest Detroit. And, mothers have to go out and sweep off their porch and wipe everything down because of the black soot that settles every night. So their kids can't go out and play. And it's in their water and everything. It's just, they've been left there. My friend Emma calls it the sacrifice zone. Like, those people don't matter. The whole system says, well, these people don't matter. All that matters are the people who's making money off of this. Well, it's working exactly the way it's supposed to. It's disgusting.
But that's the running theme across the globe. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because people need to see that it's not just in your city, it's not just in your country, it's across the globe. The people that are the most vulnerable, that live in poverty, that have the least amount of resources, are the ones that are considered dispensable. I say it in every space that I am in. What they need to know is that we are not dispensable.
And
we are the people that keeps this world going.
Mm-hmm. And for me personally, when you speak about Detroit, because I have been following what's been going on for the last years. And of course, being in solidarity, but also deep sadness. And what's really interesting when I think about Detroit, one of my most radical teachers, Grace Lee Boggs, for example.
Yes.
And Grace Lee Boggs and James Boggs, and the work around union labor, and you go back to not just like how working across, not just like thinking about how different groups of people, especially white working class people, the black working class, the white working class, for example, Asian working class, indigenous working class, that whole cross movement organizing, and how, when you talk about water now, thinking about, how does the labor movement organize with indigenous peoples and organize with feminists, for example, like there's such a big world to win. And there's so many people who are struggling sometimes in their own small corners. And I think about what are the possibilities of that kind of cross movement organizing, and building, and I think for me, it's still so much work to be done about that, the possibilities of organizers, even across continents. One of the reasons we are the African Ecofeminist Collective is that we reject the colonial borders imposed on us. Because capital has no borders. Capitalism does not see borders. Transnational corporations that will privatize water. What we're actually seeing right now is that you have all these corporations such as Suez, whatever parts of the world they are in, based in France or whatnot, but still taking the water in Africa. Our enemies do not operate as if there are borders. And so our resistance must not, and I think about Audre Lorde talking about difference. This is not to say that there are not tensions amongst us, or long, painful histories. Of course they are, right? But we must put these histories and tensions in context, but also remember that ultimately we are literally fighting for the same thing, that radical freedom, radical justice. So how do we get there? That always remains the central question, but I don't think it is impossible. Every single day, I see the possibilities of it.
Yes, that's so inspiring to hear, to know that, we're not alone in that thinking. And I noticed that you mentioned, Suez, we're dealing with something like that similar here in Michigan, with the fact that Nestle extracts so many gallons of water per minute from our underground aquifers, and they're a Swiss-based company, and it's like, you think as a community member, like, how dare they allow this country to come in and extract from us when we reap no benefits from it? But that's how capitalism works, and people have to understand that. And I'm so inspired to learn more about everything that you talked about and how we can get involved. Is there a way or a link where we can give our viewers so they can learn more about it?
Definitely. So I could, actually, just before I say that, Suez is actually one of the official partners of the World Water Forum. So right on brand, right on brand. So I have the website that, so if they want to see what we are doing in terms of the alternative World Water Forum, so we have a website for that. So basically it's FAME2022.org /EN, which is English, but just FAME2022.org. That will take you to the website of the Alternative World Water Forum. In any case, if anyone reaches out, it's very possible to send an email to, for example, the African Ecofeminists Collective at gmail.com, and could basically link them up with the forward the emails onto the Alternative World Water Forum. We're already thinking about inviting. It's also going to be a hybrid event because of course so many people will not be able to make it to Dakar for the Alternative Water Forum. So it's possible for people to organize. There's going to be possibility to organize side events. So there are possibilities to actually organize a side event during that week. So from the 22nd to the 27th of March as the African Ecofeminist Collective, and this is part of the work that we are doing within the Alternative Forum. We are going to have two main teachings, political education, we're calling them teaching webinars, one on the 22nd of February, and the other one, which is going to be the 8th of March, which is going to be a feminist assembly. So we're going to do that, and all of you are invited. We'll send the links to you guys, and maybe you can share it across. And we also hope to produce for the Alternative Water Forum, a feminist poster series and calendar that speaks on the intersections and the resistance and movements, women's resistance and feminist resistance around water in Africa. So we're going to have that, and you can print them out wherever you are and use them for political education purposes. So this is some of the things that we hope to do, but we hope that we will see some of you, maybe even if you can't physically come to Dakar to be part of the movement and the sessions, but we will have the hybrid space, so you'll be able to have virtual events.
Thank you so much for that. I would be more than happy to share it out on all of our platforms and
share it out and attend. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And definitely attend. I really will definitely enjoy being there, especially since I have very close ties. Like a lot of my father's family still resides in Liberia. So I have very close ties to my African roots. And I definitely want to keep abreast of how I can help support any causes throughout that continent as a whole.
Yeah.
Well, and the solidarity and just kind of telling our stories together and showing how much how much we are still struggling, even across the world on those things, together. That show of solidarity is so important right now. Well, that's a beautiful way to end. It's 12:31. Thank you so much for being here. It was just a wonderful conversation. I feel like I learned a lot, and I have so much to kind of learn after it that I'm going to Google and look up and really get involved in. We appreciate everything that you do. Thanks again for being here. Thanks, Nicole, for being a wonderful host always. And thanks, Lou, our tech guy in the background. You can't see him. Thank you, Lou. And until next time, my friends, take care of each other and try to stay afloat. See you next time. Bye.